This is Charles Ebune and this is GLOBEWATCH. Now, just take a listen of what I said on this channel and on this program last January 3. Great expectations. American elections held today mean either a President Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump at the White House. A likely prediction by November 4 this year when the nation of nations decides. Wherever you are, welcome to GLOBEWATCH on this third day of 2016. And that has not changed. American elections held today will simply mean either a President Donald Trump or a President Hillary Clinton by November 8, 2016, when the nation of nations goes to the polls to choose a new president. And like President Harding Coolidge said in the 1920s, the chief business of the American people is business, and the race for the nomination to the President of the United States of America for the various political parties, the Republican and the Democrats, seem to be the best example of that statement today. We take a particular look at one of the most prominent candidates in those elections, Republican presumptive candidate or nominee Donald Trump, who today seems to be the most searched name on Google. He has rose and has succeeded to explode and to send aside all other candidates. There were 16 of them, including the big names of American politics: Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. He is on the race alone now. So why is Donald Trump so successful, despite the fact that he has been such a controversial and extremely divisive figure? My guest, Professor ELVIS NGOLLE, is a product of an American university, precisely at Denver in Colorado, and has an undisputable mastery of the American political system. Professor ELVIS NGOLLE, thanks very much once more for accepting our invitation on GLOBEWATCH.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Look, Donald Trump is very successful. Why has somebody with such a controversial character clinching the Republican nomination?
Donald Trump, being an American citizen, has all the rights under the American Constitution, no matter what his character is, as long as that character does not violate the American Constitution, to be a candidate and to also vote for other candidates. Donald Trump, as you know very well, is a native of New York who inherited his father's business, and he has made billions out of it. He is now a known billionaire. He is quite a flamboyant American entrepreneur, businessman, billionaire, who is well known in America and worldwide. And he's always had political ambitions, but he has never held political office. But he's a successful entrepreneur. He's a household name in business. If you want success stories in business, Donald Trump is one of them.
Professor ELVIS NGOLLE, nobody rejects the success of Donald Trump in business. It's one of America's blessings in the business world. No. But you see, when you have people like Marco Rubio, so telegenic, so women calling when it comes to elections, when you have somebody like Ted Cruz, a kind of towering public character, when you have people like Jeb Bush, this is somebody with no political clout when it comes to elections. But Donald Trump has succeeded in erasing the dynasties of the Republican Party. He is anti-establishment, and he goes up to becoming the candidate for the Republican Party. How do you explain such an extraordinary success story?
Well, it is extraordinary indeed, because first, he is the first He's going to be the first candidate for the American presidential elections since, I think, Eisenhower, who has never held political office. And yet he has beaten, as you say, all the other candidates who are household names in American politics, and some of them are dynasties, as you've said. But I think for one to understand how Donald Trump, a member of the Republican Party, one of, as they call it, the Grand Old Party, the GOP, has succeeded to eliminate these household names and dynasties and become now the presumptive nominee and the candidate for the Republican Party in the upcoming presidential elections, which will take place on November 8th. One has to understand how the American politics has fared in the last, let's say, 8 years or so. You see, the Republican Party, which is a great national party, by the way, has not helped itself in the last 8 years or so. It's a very responsible political party which has held the presidency, I think, many more times than the Democrats have. But in the last 8 years, something has happened in American politics which has affected the Republican Party in ways that the Republican Party militants or members themselves haven't understood. And this explains why someone like Donald Trump, who is, shall we call it, an outsider, was able to eliminate insiders. The Republican Party in the last 8 years has not understood or failed to understand that in politics, particularly if you expect to lead a great country such as America, prejudice does not help you. Being negative does not help you. Violating principles, violating virtues does not help you. Because as you know, in the last 8 years, the Republican Party has spent all its energy fighting against everything that is virtuous in American politics. Against immigration, against healthcare, against the first black American to be American president, meaning Obama, against openness, against Iranian nuclear deal, against just about against everything. When you are that negative, the tendency is that you make it difficult for government to do its job or for the people to be governed. And at some point, the people become distasteful about that. And at some point, they might tend to hate anybody who is associated with government, particularly insiders. This is what has happened to the Republican Party because somehow, as the world has changed, the world has become more open, the world is becoming more virtuous, the Republican Party has ignored that. And now, the Republican Party is facing militants, members of the Republican Party, who have become used to their party saying no, no, and being negative. And so somehow, they are showing their disgust, their distaste, and they've become, let's say, apathetic. And so they are looking for somebody from outside the box who can probably, reinvent a new Republican Party that will go alongside what is politically virtuous. And herein comes Donald Trump. But the interesting thing about that Donald Trump is that this is his third time at trying to be a candidate for the office of president in the United States. The first two, he didn't succeed.
The other two attempts to become the nominee of the party and then the president of the United States of America, we didn't see him with the kind of character he has. This is somebody who comes on national television and talks about his manhood. Yeah. This is somebody who says that we need to build a wall to stop Mexicans from entering. This is somebody who says that no Muslims should enter the United States of America again. This is somebody who says that all what the black community knows around the world is laziness, sex, and begging. You have this kind of boastful character, somebody who regrets nothing he says. You just said that negative campaign, but he himself is running negative campaign. How do the American voters decide and settle on such a candidate who describes countries like China as rapist?
Yes, I mean, fortunately, it is not necessarily the general electorate of the American voters that is deciding during this at this level of the primaries. It is purely a partisan affair, which is called the primaries or caucus. It is the first stage in the American electoral process, meaning in the election of the American president. And in this first stage, it is political parties that are determining who their candidate would be. So this problem or this issue looks at political parties. But when we'll go to the second stage, which is the election day on November 8th, when the general electorate will call upon...
The truth is that the political parties cannot take a risk of having a candidate who is not going to win the general elections. As you and I know, the goal of any political party is to cling to power. You cannot have somebody in a multipolar world who says that, look, if Europeans need security, they have to pay for their security. This nonsense of NATO where the Americans are paying to secure the British, the French has to stop. When you alienate everybody at the level of the partisan level, do you think at the national level people are going to vote you to become the next 45th president of the United States?
If you look at the poll in an overall contest, if the contest were held today, I think that Mrs. Hillary Clinton beats him by, I think, 53 to 37%. So the Republican Party at this first stage is taking a risk. Of course, life is it's a question of risk taking. It's a risk they're taking. So far, as of yesterday, all the other 16 candidates who are running for the party have opted out, with John Kasich doing it yesterday. So he's the presumptive nominee now. So at the end of July in Cleveland, in the Republican convention, he will be elected. It's a risk. It's a serious political risk for the Republican Party, knowing very well what the statistics are. Well, if the risk is worth taking, we'll see what November 8th will hold, because indeed Donald Trump will be nominated in the Republican convention in Cleveland at the end of July. But on November 8th, the day of the general election, I am not sure if that risk will be worth it or not. But he seems to believe that it will be worth it. But, you know, pundits don't think so.
What is decided in Washington has an impact across the world, including you and I seated on this arena. When you have somebody, let me use that presumption, Donald Trump, as President of the United States of America come November 8, 2016, how should the world interpret that? How should we consume that, considering what he has said?
Well, I tell you already what the world's interpretation of the situation as it is now. Most of the world, except Russia, thinks that Donald Trump is not fit to be President of the United States, and they think that the Republican Party will be making a mistake by nominating him. The only place in the world where Donald Trump seems to have a favorable rating is Russia.
Why?
The rest of the world, and perhaps...
why is the Putin system comfortable with Donald Trump? Because it's going to crash America?
Yeah, perhaps because of some of the nice things he has said about the Russian President Putin. He has said favorable things about him. So somehow, maybe for the Russians, they think that an American leader who thinks favorably of their president is someone they can trust. But I know from, I mean, after all, I teach comparative government and comparative politics, and I've done so for a long time. From what I know, I'm sure that the Russians would like to have a democratically elected president who is a president of virtue, who believes in political virtue, and who believes in, who is open and who believes in a world of virtue. But the fact that those who have been polled in Russia think that Donald Trump is the one, it's quite extraordinary and quite strange, because how could the rest of the world think that Donald Trump is not fit to be American president, and yet only Russia will? So, in fact, if American elections were to be world elections, Donald Trump being a candidate would fail.
Let's get some reactions concerning Donald Trump. This is a very divisive character in American politics. Let me just give you some quotations. If we nominate Trump, we will get destroyed and we will deserve it. South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, whom I'm sure you know very well, is one of the most outspoken and well-known establishment member. I am a fiscal conservative and I am a social conservative. Blogger Ben Howard said that will not change, but we will vote for an egomaniacal authoritarian president. When you have such a character who inside the party itself is a source of division, what does that tell of American politics today?
Well, what that says is that American politics, being typically democratic politics, is on a mode which is not so desirable in terms of the fact that it is divisive now. The atmosphere is divisive, and that the tone, particularly of the campaigns, particularly the primary campaigns, is a tone which is very un-American. It's very unorthodox. It's very non-virtuous.
What lesson should students of international politics and global governance and leadership should retain, or those having ambitions to seek political power? When you look at Donald Trump, does it tell us across the world that the period of telling lies to succeed in politics is over, because Donald Trump is simply saying what an ordinary American thinks, and that is why he's succeeding? Does it mean that if you tell lies in politics, you will never succeed again? No, it is time for blunt talk?
No, I mean, bluntness does not mean telling lies. The two are not the same. They're not synonymous, but bluntness is good if you're telling the truth. I suspect, not that I suspect, I believe, and from what I read. Because
Donald Trump does not practice what experts in American politics will call offshore diplomacy, a kind of balancing equation. Donald Trump, if he says, I'm closing the barriers for Muslims, not I'm closing them. When he says, I don't believe in this, he does that. Because that, okay, China has been raping the United States of America over the years. There is no iota of packaging his message.
And of correctness. You see, even the use of the word rape is politically incorrect, in fact, socially incorrect. But he permits himself to use it, and this is very un-American and is very unorthodox.
People voting for that?
And some people do, but you say people voting for that. It's good for us to, you know, from a scientific standpoint, say exactly what the situation is. Donald Trump's base comes mostly from the American white male population. And if you look at the American politics, and particularly electoral politics from a demographic standpoint, you see that the white male in America, which is the base of Mr. Donald Trump, in the Republican Party only, it's not really such a majority. It's about, let's say, a third or so of the electorate, because, don't forget, women are about 53% of the population, and Donald Trump doesn't do well among that. The blacks, African Americans, they're about 12% of the population, and he's really poor with that. The Hispanics, about 15% of the American population. Donald Trump is poor with that. So, if you really look at it very well, based on the demographics of the United States, Donald Trump is not likely to fare that well in the general election come November 8th. If you look at the way the two major American political parties vote, the Democrats that represent the blue collar tend to be stronger along the two coasts, the West Coast and the East Coast. The Republicans that represent the red collar tend to be stronger in
the Pepsi and Coke of American politics.
Exactly.
The two main brands.
Exactly, in the South and in the center. Now, there are about 10, 12 battleground states, or what you call swing states, that represent about almost half of the electoral college, because
California,
as you know,
Ohio.
Right, yeah, Ohio is among the swing and
New York
battleground states, but New York and California tend to be blue because they are along the two coasts. California is on the West Coast, New York is on the East Coast, Massachusetts on the East Coast. So the tendency is that there is no doubt that Donald Trump might win a lot of votes in the hinterland, meaning in the interior and in the south, which is the base of the Republican Party, while, meaning red, red color, while Mrs. Hillary Clinton looks likely to be, because she's not yet the presumptive nominee, because she's still short by about 200 electoral votes. 178
delegates.
She's likely to win along the coast, both east and west, because the blue states, because that tend to be democratic. But the battleground states, all the swing states like Pennsylvania, Ohio,
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts is considered east because along the coast. So the likelihood is that Florida is a battleground state, a swing state. The likelihood is that South Carolina and so forth. The likelihood is that Donald Trump, being the candidate of Republican Party, for now is presumptive, and Mrs. Hillary Clinton being the candidate of Democratic Party, the likelihood is that the election might be close.
The other day I was watching former US UN ambassador and former ambassador of the United States of America to Iraq, one of the most senior Muslim American to be a cabinet level sitting member, Ambassador Zalmay Khalid, who said that whether it is Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, any of them who calls him to serve, he is going to come in either as Secretary of State. Probably this is a time of alliances. For Donald Trump to balance the scale, he needs a very powerful alliance. Who do you see when you look at the faces current in American politics who can accept to be his vice president in order to balance the scale?
From a geopolitical standpoint, you'll see that a candidate for the presidential election who comes from, let's say, the East will tend to choose a vice presidential candidate who will help him from another geopolitical corner of the United States. In other words, for example, for the Republican Party, Mr. Donald Trump comes from New York, therefore that's East Coast or the Atlantic, mid-Atlantic. He's likely to take a vice presidential candidate from the South, where the Republicans are expected to do well, or from the West, where they think that if they take somebody from the West, they'll break the Democrats who tend to win along the coast. As you know, there are major states that carry huge electoral college votes. These are New York on the East Coast, California on the West Coast, and Texas in the South. Of course, in the middle, you have Ohio, you have Pennsylvania, you have Illinois, you have Florida.
Indiana.
Every candidate needs to win these states.
If you look at politics in the transatlantic community, that is Western Europe and the United States of America for the moment, there has been a consistent rise of right-wingers or people with extreme tendencies in politics. If you go to Greece, if you go to France, since François Hollande came, the Front National has moved up to 7 million people. If you go to Poland and many others, why do you think that in the transatlantic community today, we have a lot of right-wingers becoming exceptional political stars?
Yes, it's a good point you've made. As you know, the transatlantic community, meaning the Western world, Western Europe and the United States, as we all know, these are open societies, and they tend to be democratic. There's lots of human rights protections and freedom and so forth. And so as open societies, they have tended to elect governments and leaders who are who are open-minded, who are leaders who promote societies of openness, pluralism, freedom, human rights, and so forth. But the price they've had to pay for that openness is that they are now facing a world in which extremist groups are trying to change their way of life. And lots of people from the societies where these extremist groups are operating, particularly the Middle East and other parts of the Third World, are flocking and migrating into the transatlantic world. Of course, the tendency is that the people have to be alarmed, and the people are beginning to think twice. You know, since the 9/11 in New York and in London and recently in Brussels, you know, citizens from the countries of the transatlantic world are not, they are alarmed and they are worried, they are concerned about the fact that
so they tend to
people
vote to more nationalist individuals.
They tend to, this is normal human behavior, they tend to become more nationalistic and they tend to say, but look, we cannot pay a price for our openness and allow people to come in who will come and destroy us.
Professor ELVIS NGOLLE, while waiting for November 8, 2016 this year to see who will be the next candidate or the next president of the United States of America, I wish to thank you very much indeed for accepting our invitation on GLOBEWATCH. Thank you very much for being there.
It's my pleasure. Always, we look forward to seeing what November 8th will offer.
You know, I sleep very late now because when the results are coming out in Cameroon, it is between 1 and 4 a.m. And in the United States, it should be around 9 p.m. or 10 p.m.
I do too. The world has an interest
in
watching
what's happening.
Do you do the same? I do the same. I slept at 2 o'clock yesterday.